Welcome to another wonderful episode of Paranormal Minds. I'm your host, Shannon Ray, and I'd like to welcome you to a very special episode of Paranormal Minds when we have guest Marie D. Jones. Before I bring Marie on, I just want to tell you a few things about Marie. She's a wonderful author, a best-selling author of Destiny versus Choice, the scientific and spiritual evidence behind fate and free will. 2013 End of Days, or A New Beginning, Envisioning the World After the Events of 2012. Marie co-authored with her father, geophysicist Dr. John Savoni, I hope I said that right, Supervolcano, the catastrophic event that changed the course of human history. She is also the co-author of 1111, the time prop phenomenon, the meaning behind mysterious sign sequences, the Renaissance Key, exploring the links between vibration, consciousness, and zero-point grid. She has an extensive background in journalism, metaphysics, and the paranormal, and has worked as a field investigator for MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, in Los Angeles and San Diego in the 1980s and 1990s. She is currently serving as a consultant and director of special projects for ARPAS, the Arkansas Paranormal and Anomalous Studies team, where she works with President Larry Flaxman to develop theories that can be tested in the field. Marie has been on television, most recently the History Channel's a History Channel series, and served as a UFO special abduction consultant for a 2009 Universal Pictures science fiction movie, The Fourth Kind. I will get my words right eventually. She has been interviewed on hundreds of radio talk shows all over the world, including Coast to Coast AM, Dreamland, The X Zone, Kevin Smith Show, Paranormal Podcast, Cut to the Chase, and many, many, many others. She is a staff writer for the Intrepid magazine and a regular contributor to the New Dawn magazine, and her essays and articles have appeared in Taps Para magazine, Phenomena, Whole Lifetimes Like Connection, Vision, Beyond Reality, and several popular anthologies such as If Women Ruled the World, which we do, and Five Chicken Soup for the Souls books. She has also contributed and co-authored 50 inspirational books, and she has lectured widely about the paranormal and new science and self-empowerment. She is also a screenwriter and co-producer of 19 Hertz, a paranormal thriller in development with Bruce Lucas Films, as well as science fiction feature film titled Twilight Child, as she serves as the co-host of a popular Dreamland radio show. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Marie. How are you doing, Marie?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
I'm super excited to have you on, and I got a little tongue-tied on your bio. But
That's okay. Too many books.
I was working on it. Well, it's nothing personal, but I kind of skipped, took out a few of them in your bio.
That's okay. They have long titles.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to spend 20 minutes, listing out every book you ever wrote. So,
Okay.
We'll just leave it as you've written a lot.
Yes, I have. And for some reason, they all have really long titles.
Exactly.
So, you have to mention a couple of them and then say, and all the rest.
Yeah. I like to kind of ask every person to kind of give an insight into the viewers about why did you get involved in the paranormal field?
I didn't really get involved so much as it was just something that was always a part of, growing up. It was an interest ever since I was a really, really young child. I just always had a fascination for telling ghost stories and aliens and UFOs, and I read a lot as a kid. I just, 5 or 6 books a week, more possibly if I could get my hands on them, and I loved science. I'm absolutely a science girl, but I also knew that there was a sort of a hidden side to reality that I really enjoyed looking into, and I never really thought that the two were separate. I always figured the paranormal was just really the other side of the coin.
Well, I mean, I personally, I believe that that's kind of the case for all of us, is that in some way or nature, we're kind of just born or pulled into it. I think we're kind of pre-programmed almost.
I think some people, yeah. Definitely there are people that just have absolutely no interest at all. But, there are others that really, there are people that are obsessed with the subject matter. But for me, it was just, I think it was a natural part of just being so interested in science and nature. And, to me, they always just went together. There was a science to the unknown, just like there's a science to the known.
I agree. Okay, so first question, I kind of want to break into your books off the bat, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, I want to start talking about first, this book is from the future.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take a moment just to explain the contents of the book and just like a brief synopsis?
It's about time travel. It is about sort of a summary of the past, present, and future of time travel research, time travel in pop culture, as far as how science fiction really laid the groundwork for the research that is going on today and will go on in the future. It looks at the ethics and morals behind the idea that we can go back into the past and tamper with it, and even into the future. So it really is sort of a time travel 101. It's got just about every aspect of that subject that you could think of in one book.
Can you inform us of a few time travel theories, one of the past, one of the present, and maybe one of the future?
Well, the past time travel theories focused a lot on what was happening with science fiction of the day. That's really the heyday of books like H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, and you had Charles Dickens' Connecticut Yankee, and all these different novels, these classics that talked about going back in time. There were all kinds of stories throughout the late 1800s all the way up until fairly recently. And even today, if you look at movies and books and TV shows, we're still fascinated with it. So in the past, it really was not as scientific. The theories involve things like, getting hit on the head, and you go to sleep and you wake up and you're in another time, you're in the past, or being hypnotized, or taking a weird pill or something. And then there were some writers that tried to sort of forecast what the science might be. And a lot of that involved things like wormholes, shortcuts through space and time that could take you from one part of the universe to another. And as time went on, that's the research that science really glommed onto. Is there a shortcut that can get us from one timeline to another, or one point in time to another? So where we're at today and what we're looking at in the future is really, can we tamper with the known laws of the universe that prevent us from doing that right now? Is that something that we can do maybe within the next 30 to 50 years? And again, you have really cool shows like all the Star Trek, even the newer movies, and all these different TV series like Fringe that talk about alternate timelines and alternate universes. They all sort of contribute to what some of the theories might play out over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
So what might be some vessels which allows time travel?
A vessel? We don't have any such thing.
Is there any?
And we probably won't for a long time. I mean, there are people that think, there are conspiracy theorists that think that we've done this already, or that the government or the military has some kind of craft or weird chair that you can sit in, and but the thing is, if we had, I feel like if we had that kind of technology, if we had that kind of advancement, we would know about it. It would never be able to, we'd be doing something with it. The problem is the way that we believe the laws of the universe are now. The only way to get beyond the speed of light, the only way to really travel through time would be with something that unfortunately has infinite mass, and that's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But you got a lot of really brilliant scientists who are really trying to think, okay, where's that little loophole that we missed? Where is that little opening that we keep overlooking that might allow us to sort of go beyond the limitations that we have or that we think we have and develop some of you see in, what is it, Back to the Future, a car. But right now, I don't think anybody has anything capable of it in terms of the physical sense.
Well, if we're theoretically talking about human time travel, could interdimensional beings just be the ones that travel merely in between dimensions? Could that be possible?
Sure. I mean, there are theories that aliens themselves, excuse me, that a lot of UFO sightings and reports can be ascribed to time travel, to time travelers, not just from other planets out there that have life, but literally from other timelines or other parallel universes. And one of the reasons why is because they obviously have developed quite an advanced level of technology and scientific knowledge to be able to come here. We obviously don't have that yet, so they're ahead of us. There are even people who believe that some of these aliens and entities that are reported are actually us from the future coming back to visit the present. So there's so many different theories. There are theories that even some ghost sightings and apparitions and some ghosts are actually, we're seeing people in another timeline who are not necessarily dead. They're not the spirit of a dead person. What we're seeing is a glimpse of someone who exists in an alternate timeline or an alternate reality.
So, can you talk about, for just a little bit, about the mysterious time shifts, slips, and wraps that people are experiencing all over the world?
Yeah, those are kind of interesting because I think everybody has had some kind of a weird experience where time slows down or it speeds up or it just doesn't behave the way it normally does. And so for some people, they have what are called time slips where, they may be walking or driving somewhere and a lot of the reports involve entering a sort of unusual electrical fog where they then find themselves, 500 miles down the road or 10 hours into the future and they really were only out for a 10-minute walk. So it's like there's some kind of mystic time that happened there, or a distortion of time. And, people also have missing time. And Larry and I both, my co-author Larry Flaxman, we both have had missing time experiences that we wrote about in the book where there's completely different circumstances where we each lost, a few hours of time that we couldn't account for. But the time shifts are more collective. They're more large groups of people experiencing a time distortion. And just people that have a sense that something is happening maybe on a more global scale where we might be, some people will talk about solar activity having something to do with a sense of time not behaving the way it should. People reporting glimpses of things from the past or having visions of the future, what have you, but it happens on a bigger scale. It's not just one or two people.
Now, in regards to, time slips and shifts and things of that nature, do you personally believe that it takes a certain kind of person to experience these or that anyone's subject to them?
I think anybody can. I think it's a matter of being, literally, I hate to say it, but being in the right place at the right time. I think that, what you're dealing with could also have something to do with an alignment of certain environmental aspects, like possibly solar activity, electromagnetic fluctuations, seismic activity, but also our own physiology could determine who has a time slip and who doesn't. And sometimes when those things line up perfectly, the person can have a paranormal experience. And that's really complex because what we've realized, what Larry and I have realized, and we just wrote a book, we have a book coming out called The Grid where we talk about this, is that people who have unusual experiences that go beyond everyday, day-to-day, normal, boring reality, they're not really special. They're not, they're not different. What's different is that something in their physiology aligns perfectly with something in the environment. In other words, an internal influence lined up perfectly with an external influence and allowed that person to have an experience. Whereas the person standing right next to them that has a little bit of a different physiology, they didn't have the experience. And that could explain why a lot of people go on quote unquote ghost hunts. And, 3 people will have an experience and the other 6 people don't. Or you could be standing next to someone who sees an apparition, but you can't see it. You're not saying that that other person is crazy or hallucinating. They may actually be having a real bona fide experience, but the reason why you're not has more to do with your body than you think, than your beliefs or anything like that. So it's a whole bunch of different things that have to sort of get into alignment for somebody to have an experience. But the time slips, there are reports of time slips happening to all kinds of people all over the world, all ages, all walks of life. And it just seems like what it is somebody being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think these anomalies like slip shifts and wraps could have anything to do with, or even relate remotely to cases of deja vu?
Absolutely. Deja vu is really interesting. And we wrote a book called The Deja Vu Enigma because we wanted to look at not just deja vu, but the power of the human mind and the human brain and consciousness, because so much goes on there that we felt a lot of people in the paranormal field don't pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we took deja vu as a sort of gateway experience. Like people say, marijuana is a gateway drug to all the bad drugs.
Yeah.
So to us, we thought, okay, deja vu is sort of a gateway experience to a lot more intense paranormal experiences, simply because deja vu is something that just about everybody has or has had, or, it's very, very common. And other things like seeing a ghost or an alien or what have you, they're not so common. But with deja vu, what has happened is there's been a whole lot of research into the scientific aspects of deja vu, and yet even the people that have done the research say there's still no definitive answer as to why it happens and what it means. The people that have deja vu will tell you, myself included, and I'm sure you've had it, that it really feels like more than just a little glitch of the memory or a little loop of, some kind of stimulus coming into the eyes or what have you. It really feels to so many people like they're experiencing another reality, even though it might last for literally 5 seconds. So it's a really powerful experience that a lot of people have. So we think of it as a common gateway paranormal experience that we can then sort of launch from and talk about how powerful our minds and our brains are and how weird they are too.
And they are very weird and very complex.
And they do really weird things to us.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, they really are. Our dreams, our memories, our beliefs, all of that stuff can make us, can literally shape our perception of reality.
Yeah, and I have deja vu all the time. I'll just be like, didn't I already do? Like, I have that frequently. So when you were talking about that, I just had to ask because it just kind of like popped into my brain. I was like, maybe is there any kind of link there? Because I've never had any of that other time stuff, but deja vu and me, we go hand in hand, and I don't know why.
It seems to be a real common experience for some reason, whereas other types of paranormal experiences are not. They happen to fewer people, but excuse me, my feeling is deja vu is a glimpse into parallel universes or other realities that we exist in. And what we're doing is we're getting a piece of ourselves in another timeline, in another time frame where just for those few seconds we're doing the exact same thing that we're doing in this one, and so it feels like you're split. You know, it almost feels like you have two of you, a double personality.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's just a really creepy, bizarre feeling. And, you know, every scientific theory that has been thrown out at deja vu never quite completely explains it, nor does it explain why some people have, during deja vu, past life visions or precognitive visions of the future, and that's very common. And a lot of those come true. So how do you just pack that up as a memory glitch when, you know, somebody's having a vision or a little glimpse of something that's going to happen in 2 weeks, and then it does? Or they have a glimpse of, oh, I've been to this place before, but I was here 5,000 years ago, you know.
Exactly.
And yet they have just such an intense memory, and some of that memory, some of those details can be corroborated. There's just, you know, some of those little extra elements that happen that really keep science from being able to definitively say this is what deja vu is.
Yeah, and it is hard to put a finger on, even scientifically, because I'm going to tell you, when it happens to me, because it happens frequently, to be honest, I have to stop and I take a step back and I'm like, have I done this? When did I do this? Like, it feels like you've done it, and then you start thinking, or you feel like you've done this, and you start thinking, and you're like, but when did I do it? Like, it doesn't make sense in your brain because you don't have like an active memory. It's not like, oh, I remember, yeah, it happened when I was 5. It never comes to your memory, but it's just like, I know I've already done this and it doesn't make sense, or I know I've experienced this already and it doesn't make sense. And it does kind of like, because you're sitting there and you're like, am I going crazy? Because I feel like I've already experienced this.
Right, exactly. And sometimes, you know, it lasts quite a while. You really feel like, oh wow, this, you know, you start to get a little disoriented, excuse me, almost dizzy, because it feels, again, it's like you feel like you're in two places at once, and yet you're in the same place. So there's just two of you. And for me, and I know for a lot of people that I talk to, you can predict what's going to happen next. Like if you're having deja vu during a conversation, you can predict what that person is going to say, like, you know, a fraction of a second before they say it. And that's important because that is an element of precognition, of being able to step in. You know, it's like you're sort of off the timeline by a fraction of a second. So you know what's going to happen in the future. Like, wow, we could tap into that and play around with it. We might be able to predict what's going to happen an hour later instead of just a fraction of a second.
Absolutely. And it all comes from within us, which is, you know, what's the cool thing. And there's not any external vessel or anything. It's from within us.
It is. And that's another thing that freaks people out, especially, you know, science, when they're trying to research this, is, okay, we can trigger deja vu in a lab. We can trigger it in a hospital setting, but why does it happen to people just out on the street? You know, what's going on where all of a sudden you're just having lunch with a friend and boom, you're having deja vu, or you're just walking to your car and all of a sudden it happens. What is going on that triggers it when you're in a natural setting? That we're not quite sure of.
Yeah, and it does. The occurrence of deja vu itself just blows my mind because I'm not very proud of it, but I've had an argument with someone before about the fact that I had already said something to them that they said I didn't say, that I was like, I did say this. And they it ended up, it was really like one of those cases where I had to stop and look back and think and go, well, if I said it, when did I say it? You know, and start breaking it down. But to me, I had already said it. And it was so weird. I mean, those kind of things just get weird. Because then you start thinking, when you stop and you think, okay, well, if it's been done, when was it done? Or when was it said? Or da-da-da. Then you can't remember. And you're like, well, then hang on. You know, that's when it takes you for a loop.
And the thing about time shift is you have large groups of people that are doing that. One of the really popular time shifts that you know I've heard about is every now and then you have a large group of people who insist that they remember like a celebrity dying, and they remember hearing it on the news, and they remember the celebrity's family, mourning and grieving on TV and seeing it on Yahoo or whatever, only to find that that celebrity's alive and well. And that's happened several times, like in the last 30 years, and people have just collectively said, no, wait a minute, we're certain this has happened, and yet it didn't happen. So that's like a time shift where you have a large number of people having those little glitches. So what, are all their brains all at the same time just having a weird memory glitch, or is something else happening?
Yeah, exactly, something bigger, so to speak. So speaking of timelines, could there be a possibility that we are coexisting with another timeline or kind of an alternate reality?
Oh, absolutely. I kind of, and I can't prove this, and nobody can, but I think that people have so many unusual experiences that they can't explain in this reality that it almost feels like we're interacting with these other, and Larry and I call them other levels of the grid. It's like a grid of reality. There's all these different levels, and we're existing on one. But there's all these other levels that we may somehow be connected to. We may have ways to experience them or communicate back and forth or just get little glimpses and interactions with them. And so I think when people are going about their day and all of a sudden just there's like a weird synchronicity, or just, they see something or something happens, it's just like, whoa, where did that come from? Or they have a time slip, or they see a ghost. I really feel are times that we're getting a glimpse into some of those other levels of the grid that we exist within.
So what is meant by the term that time is leaking?
Well, that's a theory that one particular scientist said that, if we think of time as being this sort of fixed, forward moving, almost like you shoot an arrow from a bow and arrow. And it's just going in one direction, and it's very fixed. But there's, again, when you think about anomalies of time, it almost looks like time is leaking out of its fixed position. It's not behaving in that strictly forward motion that we are used to, that we perceive. We get little experiences where we feel like time is, maybe we can go back to the past, or maybe we are seeing something that's going to happen 10 years from now, or what have you. So yeah, time can leak. And I think we all have some of those experiences. We sort of brush them under the rug. But I think we all are aware. And it can be something as simple as if you get really involved in something and time goes by really fast. You look up and you think, oh, just, an hour's gone by, but 3-4 hours have passed. Just the ways that we have, that our perception of time shifts and changes depending on what we're doing, depending on how distracted we are or how focused we are examples of how time can leak.
Now, could we already be among real time travelers?
Well, again, you got the conspiracy people that think that, everybody from the aliens that crashed at the Roswell crash in 1947 were us from the future. And you've got stories of people that claim that they were involved in government projects, the Montauk chair and the Philadelphia experiment, and, that all these different government entities were testing children and turning them into time travelers, all this stuff. Now, there's no way to prove any of it. It's, literally the people who are claiming it, their word against everybody else. But it's, we call them urban myths and legends of time travel and time travel conspiracies. And there are a lot of them. And some of them have a little bit of meat to them, but they're not provable. And then, you have to think too, does it make sense that if there's other life out there in the universe, that it's all happening on the same timeline that we are? So if we are being visited by other beings or advanced civilizations from other planets, other worlds, other universes, they may be operating on a much different time frame. And in fact, if we buy into the parallel universe and multiverse theory, some of those visitors could be us.
And that blows your mind even more.
It does. Yeah, and I mean, there's no proof of any of that, but again, if you look at the science fiction of the time, and you look back and you see how the science fiction of the past, so much of it evolved into real science of today, you have to wonder, okay, it sounds so crazy and outlandish, but what of that is going to end up someday being true?
Well, we are going to take just a little break to wet our whistles. And then we're going to be right back, and we're going to shift gears into the 2013 End of Days, or A New Beginning, and then onto your new book, The Grid, Exploring the Hidden Infrastructure of Reality. So we will be right back. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. Wet your whistles. Grab your Oreos, Robin Marie, and we'll be back.
Okay.
With Marie D. Jones. And we're going to switch gears, Marie, if it's cool with you, The End of Days or A New Beginning.
Sure.
We're going to switch gears to that book, and then we're going to get to your brand new book last. I like to save the best for last. So can you take a moment to explain just kind of a brief synopsis of the book for those who in the viewing audience who might not have heard of it?
Well, that book was written because so many people were asking me a few years ago, what is all this fuss about 2012 and, is the world going to end and blah, blah, blah. And of course, I knew it wasn't. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to write a book that covered every different legend, mythology, theory, conspiracy, just everything that was out there about 2012, where the myth originated with the Mayan calendar, and then I even wanted to get into some of the more realistic things that were going to happen this year, next year, and into the future. And then the end of the book, I have a number of essays that were written by people who, how they felt. Anybody, famous writers and researchers, paranormal people, scientists, what have you, and what their opinion was. The book is kind of obsolete because obviously we're all here, Nothing really major happened, but it's still a great book because it does talk about, where the whole myth and the whole legend came from, how it got distorted, especially by religious beliefs that were attached onto it. But really, what I love about the book is the section that talks about all of the realistic challenges that we're facing now and that we're going to be facing in the next few years. Sure.
Now, do you believe that with the advances we are making within the paranormal field, that we are more insightful, or the veil is becoming thinner?
I think it's both. I think the veil's probably always been thin, but I think it's becoming thinner because of the shift in the perception of the masses. And one thing that's led to that, obviously, are the TV shows, even though I'm not a big advocate or fan of them.
Yeah.
Because they don't really portray paranormal research in any kind of truthful way at all. But they're great because they opened up to mainstream audiences, a fascination for this subject. And that has helped. And probably the biggest thing of all, though, has been the internet and social networking and the availability and ease of spreading information. You have more people now that can talk about their experiences, compare notes, share their ideas than you ever did before. So it gives the impression that more people are having these experiences, but I think we're just more aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the more people that become aware of them, the more other people feel comfortable saying, well, that happened to me. I had this experience, and I never wanted to talk about it, but I thought it was a freak. So I think that really mass media and the internet has been really good for mainstreaming the subject. The bad thing about that is that everybody has sort of jumped into the waters, and when that happens, a lot of times it muddies the water. So it's a little bit harder to take the good scientific oriented research out of the more pop culture stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a problem. But it happens like that. It happens in the UFO field. It happens with any kind of subject matter that people get fascinated with, and eventually they'll go off and they'll become fascinated with the next big thing. We're kind of going through the zombie thing now.
Yeah.
And the diehards will stay and they'll keep doing their research. But it's definitely, it feels like the veil is thinner, and maybe it is. Maybe it has some kind of environmental influence going on. But I think a lot of it really is just so much more awareness and so much more ability to. I could talk to somebody in India about this. I couldn't do that 20 years ago without, making a long distance phone call to one person at a time. And now you've just got all kinds of groups that people can join and feel comfortable about talking about what's happening to them. So it's definitely changed.
Yeah. What are some of the lesser known predictions and prophecies about end of days?
Oh, most of them never happen. I mean, 2012, there was the year 2000, the Y2K. I mean, come on, that was a big joke. You've got religious extremists who glom onto a date that they misinterpret in a religious text, and it's not just Christian, it can be anybody. And, you sort of build it like a cult following around that. I think people are fascinated by the end of the world. We have this weird sort of death wish collectively, and we're just sort of fascinated by it. So anytime somebody comes up with an end date, like I know Nostradamus said the world wasn't going to end until sometime in the year 3000 something or other. We got a long ways to go, and the Hebrew calendar doesn't end until 1,000 years from now at least. And all these different predictions that were made in the 70s and the 80s about how the world was going to end in 1984, and oh no, it's going to end the year 2000. they don't pan out. And the reason why is because they're usually based on, human error or just misinterpretation of very vague writing. I mean, if you look at religious texts, including the Bible, those references are very veiled, they're very symbolic, they're very vague. You can kind of interpret them any way you want. But if the time is right, people tend to want to latch on to something like that. Like I think when, there's war going on or there's economic downturn, people get really depressed for some reason. They really get into these end of the world scenarios,
I've never really been one that's a fan, just to be honest, and it's just because if it's gonna come, I don't want to know.
I know, really.
And
it's
so,
like, why would you want to? Yeah.
I mean,
let it happen.
Like I know because everybody talked about it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not one of those things I sit there at night and watch documentaries on or anything, because I'm one of my imagination runs wild with me. And
me too.
So I could not, if I were to sit there, I'd drive myself crazy. I could not. I mean, it'd be insane, like me tracking when I thought the world was going to end.
Well, look at there's this show, I think it's called Doomsday Preppers or something like that, where you have like these families that are literally, their whole lives are preparing for the apocalypse. And, it makes for great quote-unquote reality TV, but you have to wonder how depressing and negative is it to live in constant preparation for
death.
First of all, an ending that may never come, but second of all, you're putting that energy out there, that expectation of disaster and violence, and I don't want to contribute to that. I want to contribute to the good stuff, and not help bring about the bad stuff. But people have their reasons, and it's kind of fascinating why so many people really wish the world would come to an end.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump on that boat. But I am going to jump on the boat with the grid, exploring the infrastructure of exploring the hidden infrastructure of reality. You like that transition, right? So
that was a good
one. Can you take a moment just to kind of give a brief breakdown of this book, your newer book?
This book, again written with Larry Foxman, is it's sort of an introductory look at our idea of why reality is the way that it is. And, a lot of people who are in the paranormal don't realize that you'll never really be able to explain other realities until we get a handle on our own and how it all works together. And so over the last 6 years that Larry and I have known each other and worked together and written together, this was our 7th book, we came up with this theory that involves external influences, again, aligning with physiological internal influences. And when they do, it allows us access to these other levels of the grid, these other realities that exist right alongside our own, the one that we exist in day to day, our waking reality. So what we try to do in the book is we try to come up with a visual image for the infrastructure of this grid of reality, and the image that we came up with is a skyscraper. So in the book we kind of explain the different parts of the skyscraper in terms of different realities, parallel universes, the multiverse, alternate dimensions, other timelines. And then we really get into how people are already, we call it grid walking the grid. They're experiencing other realities, whether it's through dreaming or meditation or just any kind of altered state of consciousness activity. A paranormal experience, it could be channeling. For some people it could be just being out in nature where you have an experience that allows you, as you said earlier, to sort of see beyond that veil into another reality. Now, you don't exist in that reality all the time, but you get glimpses of it, and you get glimpses of, I think, a number of different realities. And we also talk about how things like ghosts, cryptids, cryptozoological creatures, entities, apparitions, aliens, what have you, demons, how all of these things may literally be coming from other levels of reality. They might actually exist. And, you know, as living things that exist on other levels of reality, which is why for so long we felt like, why does everybody think of a ghost as the essence of a dead person that's wandering around a particular building? And that may be the case for some ghost sightings, but a lot of sightings and reports really don't fit that explanation. A lot of them sound, and the same goes for UFO reports, like somebody is seeing into another reality where that entity, that apparition, that whatever you want to call it, is alive. I mean, they actually exist. Talk about UFO reports where you've got objects that literally appear and disappear right before your eyes as if they're interdimensional. But, you know, in their dimension, they exist. We just get to see that 5-10 second peak as they somehow slip into our perception and our reality. So we wanted to also look at how that might happen and how one person can have an experience and the other person standing next to them can't. And it has to do with our bodies. So it's a really cool book. It's very introductory because our research is ongoing, and we'll be writing a lot more about the grid as time goes on, but it's a really wonderful, we think, visual and eye-opening tour of reality and all the other levels of reality we might be experiencing.
Now, is this book is available now?
It just came out last week, so it should be in bookstores, and I know people that pre-ordered on Amazon and Barnes & Noble are starting to get them shipped. So it's, yeah, I think the official release date was like the 20th.
So it's definitely coming out. I do have a question from the chat box that I want to shoot your way, if that you're okay with that.
Sure.
Can you ask Marie about another upcoming book, Viral Mythology?
Oh, yeah. This is coming out in January of, what's next year?
2014.
Oh my God, can you believe it? This is our newest book. We're just editing it now. It is about how, it's kind of hard to explain. We started to write this because we kept thinking, how much truth is there in legends, in stories, in fairy tales, in mythology, in religious texts? Do they tell us anything scientific about the world, about reality, about history? And it just took off from there. So basically what it's about how information, whether it's scientific knowledge, spiritual wisdom, just any kind of information from ancient times, has been passed down to us in the form of story, art, architecture, hidden knowledge. It's got to do with, ancient alien theory. So basically it's about how did information go viral in the past? How does it go viral now? And how did it get from the past to us now? Why did some stories and legends and some of our art and some of our architecture, like the pyramids, survive? What are they trying to tell us? What didn't survive? It's just packed with stuff. Probably, we both said to each other when we were done, that was the hardest book we've ever researched and written. We really do talk about, is there truth to myth? Is there truth to the stories in the Bible, the Torah, the Quran? Is there truth to, legends and fairy tales and, oh gosh, nursery rhymes even? And then we look back at architecture, at Easter Island, at Stonehenge, at the pyramids, and all these edifices and monuments. What information were they trying to pass down from thousands of years ago to us today because they wanted us to know? And are we interpreting it correctly? So it's a really cool book.
Well, your research might prove me wrong in your book, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you my personal belief is everything comes from some kind of truth. Some kind.
Oh, I totally agree.
In my personal humble opinion.
No, me too. Now, here's the thing, because, as a writer, I love to read, and I read a lot of fiction. And one of the things that really drove the desire to look into this was I started to realize that there is more truth in a lot of fiction, even movies and TV shows that are just made up fiction than people realize. Because as a writer, I can tell you, if I want to tell a truth, sometimes it's easier to push that truth on the public through telling them a story than it is to come right out and say it in a nonfiction book like the ones that I wrote. And so that really launched that whole investigation into, okay, all of the stuff that's come from ancient times, whether it's Egypt, Babylonia, Syria, all the way back, how much of that is truth? How do we separate the truth from the myth? Especially things like the Bible. These wonderful stories. Okay, what is historical truth? What really happened?
Yeah.
How do we tell? And the only way to know that is to try to understand how people during that time processed information, how they let ideas go viral. So today we have the internet to go viral. We have YouTube. Well, they didn't have that back then. So it really is, if I may say so myself, it's just a fascinating book that is going to blow people's minds. You'll never look at a fairy tale the same way again. Or even a nursery rhyme,
Yeah. Well, I know that like some nursery rhymes do have historical fact behind them. I have learned that before.
And look at that today. I mean, look at our dumb memes that go around today, on Facebook and stuff. There's always a nugget of truth as to what is going on in the public and what society is experiencing and all of the goofy stuff that we do today. So we wanted to know if we can look back at the past and what the ancient people were doing and thinking, we might be able to get an understanding of, really what was going on back then. And what is it that they wanted us to know? What hidden knowledge did they encode in their stories and their myths that they didn't think they could be open about? Yeah. Maybe the authorities at the time would have, killed them. It really gets into all that.
Which in nursery rhymes and fairy tales and children's stories from back in the day, that really is there, because I know as an early childhood educator, when I was in school, we actually had to research and look at the stories behind fairy tales and nursery rhymes, and some of that stuff's kind of grim. It's not.
Oh, well, you got the Brothers Grimm, and it's funny because their stories were brutal.
They were bad. They were not.
They were.
It wasn't. It was. They were to scare. They were to scare children, not give them happy endings.
And then you realize, when you do the research, you realize that that there were these heavy-duty psychological reasons why those stories were written and why they affect us so much. And I love to go back to the myths, Roman and Greek and Norse myths, and we know that, Thor and all these gods, Zeus and Jupiter, they didn't really exist, but they were created around the real acts of nature that the people at that time didn't really understand scientifically. So the only way they had to explain what was going on around them was through story. And I just love digging through dirt to try to find the little gems. It's really cool.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to thank you so much, Marie, for being on tonight. You've been an amazing guest, and I hope I cannot wait to read this viral mythology once it comes out. I'm looking forward to it.
It comes in January, so I'll have to come back on and we can talk about it. It's fun. And did you notice how quick that hour went by?
Yeah. I did. Absolutely. So, but I do want to go ahead and say one more time, Marie's website has been up on your screen all night, but it is www.mariedjones.com. The new book that is out right now, just came out last week, is The Grid, Exploring the Hidden Infrastructure of Reality. Super awesome book, deals with everything to do with reality and different realities and things of that nature, and it's awesome. Read it, or be square. And
yeah, really.
And I cannot wait for Viral Mythology to come out. I think it's going to be awesome, and I will definitely have you back on. I'm going to Start plugging you in for February already, baby.
That sounds good. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Marie, for being on. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight and seeing me and the lovely Marie on Paranormal Minds. And we will see you next week, same time, same place. Everybody have a wonderful week. Bye.